Good morning.
How are you, Ewan?
Hello, Paolo. How are you?
Sorry I'm a bit late. I lost my headphones.
No
So I
worries,
had
no
to
worries. How
people
about
were
you been?
people were expecting us. I've been well. I've been well.
Well, I thought it was a good opportunity to greet people and to welcome people in Nuit Saint-Georges. I don't know whether the color is good. No,
The
can you see it well?
color is perfect. It looks
Yeah,
very autumn-like over
absolutely. Well,
in your vineyard.
you know that Burgundy, enfin, this part of Burgundy is called la Côte d'Or, and maybe you knew it, but Côte d'Or means Golden Coast, and the Golden Coast is just because of those 2 or 3 weeks that when the leaves are falling down, where
Yeah.
basically all Burgundy covers itself with gold, and it's actually quite pretty. So since this chat was right in the middle, I thought that was a good opportunity for everyone to see that.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you joining us from the vineyard.
No, my pleasure.
And of course, it's always good to see you. And even though I haven't been to Burgundy for quite a few months now, I
Indeed.
kept in touch with some of you. And of course, it's good to see you here live doing this tasting with us. So I thought we should start with a little history, a little background
Sure.
about Domaine Faiveley. And
Hmm.
then we can move on to our selection of wines for today. So if you don't
Absolutely.
mind, give us some background. Some of us know you and know the domain's history a little bit, but some of us
Hmm.
don't. So please
Sure.
take us through that.
So obviously we are an old domain, an historical domain from Burgundy, based in Nuit Saint-Georges. Uh, we were established in 1825. My sister and I, we are the seventh generation to run this family domain. We have three main hearts. One being Mercurey down in the south, where we have roughly 70 hectares. We have another one heart in Gevrey-Chambertin, where we are also quite big, and of course Nuit Saint-Georges, the cradle of our family, where we are based. That's right. We are People know us either as Domaine Faiveley or Joseph Faiveley. That goes back to history. Initially, we were a négoce house, meaning that 200 years ago we were just a négociant, buying fruits, turning them into wine, and now over the years we have always our philosophy is that you if you had to rely on someone else to sell you the fruits, it would be little complicated to make great wines in the long run. So little by little, we have reinvested our profits into buying many vineyards, and today, 7 generations later, we are mostly a domain than a négoce. 80% of the wines we do are coming from our own vineyards. So this is why that now we like to call us Domaine Faiveley. Since, as I said, the vast majority of the wines we do are produced and farmed by us. We are mostly a domain of Pinot Noir. We are based in Nuit Saint-Georges, Gevrey-Chambertin. Of course, we are mostly making Pinot Noir, but yet we also have a few spectacular white wine. One of them being, Corton Charlemagne, Bâtard Montrachet, Bienvenue Bâtard Montrachet, and that philosophy was to expand in the white wine in the Chardonnay range is rather new for us. We historically we've had a tiny plot of Corton Charlemagne, but we have grown this over those past few years into buying some Bâtard Montrachet, Bienvenue Bâtard Montrachet, etc. And today I can say I can say we are also a pretty serious Chardonnay producer as well.
Brilliant. So how much of the land do you have is in Mercredi and versus the Côte d'Or, Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit?
So we have today roughly we have 70 hectares in Mercurey, and we have roughly 50 hectares in Côte d'Or. The majority being Côte de Nuit. Gevrey-Chambertin, as I said, and Nuit Saint-Georges, with tiny plots in the Côte de Beaune. I'm thinking of Corton-Charlemagne, Corton-Claudet, Corton-Févelet, Bienvenue Bâtard, Bâtard-Montrachet, etc. Enfin, wines that we won't taste today, but wines I really advise everyone who's watching this video to taste at some point.
Brilliant. And tell me about the farming practice. I mean, what do you do in the vineyards?
Sure.
Organic and so forth.
Alors, we are not organic in the sense that we don't use copper and sulfur for oidium and mildew. So we are nearly organic. We are what we call HVE. It's a high environmental. We are farming our vineyards under the norm HVE, high environmental value, which is a norm that has been set by the French government in order to show the best practice as possible regarding farming for those who don't truly believe in organic, which we are. I don't believe that sulfur and copper in the long term is something good for the vineyards. So this is why we are, as I said, we are almost organic, with just the exception of sulfur and copper. And this is true all over our 120 hectares.
Okay, great. And when did you buy the Mercurey? Was it recent?
No, alors Mercurey is something that is very that's really part of our history, because the first lease that we signed were at the beginning of the century, so in 1900s or so. We signed those leases with a family from Lyon. And over the years, this family decided not to be involved in wine, in vineyards anymore. So we had the opportunity to buy those vineyards, and that really happened in the 60s. And actually on the picture you're just showing, this is this is part of our Mercurey holding. And the reason why we invested in that region, it's mostly that already back then, many decades, a few generations ago, wines from the Côte d'Or were already quite pricey, and we thought it was a good opportunity to find great Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, by great values at least for those great value for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And as I said, we bought this domain in the 60s, and ever since it's been one of our signature signature wines.
Okay, so let's come back to your base, Nuit Saint-Georges.
Mm-hmm.
You own quite
where
a
I'm
few
standing
vineyards
right now.
There. Right, exactly.
That's right.
You own quite a few
exactly.
pieces of vineyard. Describe a little bit about the geography of the overall, stylistic difference of Nuit Saint-Georges.
Sure,
yes, please.
Sure. I think Nuit Saint-Georges is certainly one of the most challenging appellation in Burgundy. Why is this? Because everyone knows about Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit, and in my mind, Côte de Beaune and Côte de Nuit, this difference in terms of style really happens in Nuit Saint-Georges. In Nuit Saint-Georges, if you look at the map of Nuit Saint-Georges, Nuit Saint-Georges is really divided in two areas. You have the northern part and you have the southern part. And for me, the Côte de Nuit, yeah, exactly. So everyone can see on the video the city of Nuit Saint-Georges, which is in grayish, in grayish, and you have all the southern part of Nuit Saint-Georges and all the northern part of Nuit Saint-Georges. And for me, as I said, the two côtes are dividing here in Nuit Saint-Georges. The northern part is really what you have to know is, what you have to understand is that the northern part is really the vineyards are on the same hill of Vosne-Romanée. So you really you begin to have this Vosne-Romanée, Côte de Nuit style meaning that the tannins are getting much refined, much more velvety. Whereas if you go in the southern part of Nuits Saint-Georges, this is where you will find, I would say, the classic Côte de Beaune wines, meaning with a lot of depth. The tannins are not as refined, but are very strong, quite masculine, and yeah, that's my that's really, and this is why when you're talking about Nuits Saint-Georges, it really depends on which side of the city you're based. If you're on the northern side, it's very much a kind of Vosne Romanée type of approach. If you are on the southern side, it's much more a type of Nuits Saint-Georges / Pommard / Corton. You get the idea.
Any exceptions? Any change to the rule?
One of the exceptions I would say is Les Saint-Georges, because Les Saint-Georges is based in the south, so you would expect a wine that's quite masculine and in a sense a little bit rustic, and it's absolutely not the case. Les Saint-Georges is usually a very refined type of wine. The tannins are usually quite lovely, very sweet, very elegant, very different than the Porret Saint-Georges, for example.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. I would like to start the tasting, because we have to go through 4 wines.
Sure.
So how would you recommend us to start?
So let me walk, because I also have prepared the tasting for myself. So let me walk back to the winery. It's right there.
Okay, perfect.
I think I would start with the 2015. Because 2015, why? Because 2015 is obviously extremely serious, very, very serious. At the moment, it's not the best vintage. It's not the vintage I would recommend to drink now. It's definitely a vintage that needs a little bit of
time.
Yeah, I would say a couple of years. At least a couple of years. Whereas the 17 is really becoming very, very. It's really turning. It's really becoming. It's becoming extremely, extremely pretty. So just for those who have never been to the winery, this is the. So this is where the magic happens. This is where This is where the magic happens. And let me. I'm gonna walk back to the tasting room.
Okay.
So yeah. So I would suggest let's start with the 2015, and then we'll move on with the 17. Right?
Okay. Perfect. So are all the 2020s still in the?
No. Here, no. In the vats, no. Also, 2020 was a very early picking vintage. So we began the harvest in early August 20th. So we are, as you can see, as you can imagine, usually the vinification would last between 3 to 4 weeks. So we are all the vats that are down here in the winery have been emptied. If you want to take a look, so all those vats have been emptied for quite. Yeah, that's right. I wish I could give you a glimpse of the barrel cellar, but unfortunately, I doubt I would have much connection over there. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So let's come on. I'm taking you to the tasting room.
No problem.
It's true. It's been too long. You haven't been here, Paolo.
I know. So hopefully, I hear there are more and more cases in France again. So it doesn't seem like we'll be able to travel and see each other for a few more months.
That's part of my concern. That's for sure. So here all the wines I prepared that I have co-ravined I have Coravine,
Yeah, I did the same.
obviously. You did the same.
Yeah.
So as I said, let's start with the 2015, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So 2015, it was quite clever to pair them to get to together. Those two wines that we are going to taste are from the northern part of Nuits Saint-Georges. We have Les Chéniaux and Les Damauds, and especially the I really want, when you taste those wines, try to have this Vosne Romanée type of approach in your mind, because this is really what you're going to taste. Les Chéniaux is one of my favorite wine, one of my favorite Premier Cru at the Domain. It's a vineyard that is middle slope, in the slope of all the great Grand Crus of Vosne Romanée. This is really the altitude where you'll find the Latache, the Romanée Conti, the Richebourg, etc. It's based in Nuits Saint-Georges. Between Les Chéniaux and Malconsort, you have Les Boudeaux, which is also a spectacular Premier Cru. I saw but by the way, I saw the Domaine Griveaux as just logged in. Yeah, I don't know if it's Mathilde or Etienne behind it. I say hi, and come on, they know what I'm talking about because they have some Boudeaux, and yeah. Boudeaux is in my sense the greatest Premier Cru in Nuits Saint-Georges. Unfortunately, we don't have with Les Saint-Georges, but so we don't have Les Boudeaux. We are right next to it with Les Chéniaux. So just like Les Boudeaux, it's a deep, very serious wine, but with the finesse, the rondeur of Vosne Romanée. Something quite unusual also for us. 2015, we had decided to put an unusual amount of whole cluster in our wines. So the two wines that you're tasting here, Les Damauds and Les Chéniaux, both of them have roughly 25% of whole cluster.
Was that the first time you add whole cluster?
Not the first time. No, not the first time. But we are very, very careful of when we use stems. We use stems only when we really feel like it, and especially when the stems are ripe. In 2015, the stems were very, very pretty. So we have in a few appellations, mostly appellations that are close to Vosne Romanée and Chambolle-Musigny, we have used quite a bit of whole cluster, but none in Gevrey-Chambertin, none in Côte de Beaune, a little bit in Mercurey, because for some reason Mercurey stands very, very well whole cluster, but that's pretty much it. So as I said, since on those two terroirs we are very close to the Vosne Romanée style, we thought a little bit of whole cluster would be a good idea, and I'm very, very happy with what we've done.
And have you done it again in 16 or the recent vintages?
No.
17, 18?
No. 16 no, 17 no, 18 a little bit. 19 as well. In 2020, we were very low on whole cluster on whole cluster because the pH were already quite high, and as you might know, when you add some stems, you tend to increase the pH as well. So we were very careful on the amount we use.
Okay.
Voilà.
Can you tell us a little bit about the soil difference of Damauds and Chéniaux?
Alors, Damauds is very close to Chéniaux, but Damauds is more in altitude, and Damauds is really where the border of Nuits Saint-Georges. Enfin, Damauds is right above Boudeaux, and Nuits Saint-Georges ends in Damauds high in altitude, Boudot mid-slope, and right next to it, this is where you will find Les Malconsors. The plot we have in Les Damodes is very, very pretty, but I would say the big difference between Chéniaux and Damodes, as I said, is it's the altitude, and therefore the soil in Damodes is much more is more poor than Chéniaux. Chéniaux, you will have a big thick soil, whereas in the Damodes the vines are almost planted on the rocks, on the rock. You have to imagine that the hill, the hill we are talking about is just a big rock of calcaire, limestone, and Les Damodes is literally the vines are literally planted in the rock. So in terms of style, Les Damodes is usually is more mineral than Les Chéniaux. It's usually a little lighter as well. As I said, between the two, for me, the Chéniaux is my favorite because I like wines with depth, and the depth in the Chéniaux, a translation of the thickness of the soil.
Okay, and the treatment of new oak for these two wines?
Exactly the same. In 2015, if I recall correctly, most of the Premier Cru were around 40% new oak, and the rest being 2 or 3 year old barrels. Sorry.
It's been it's been more than 10 years since you arrived back at Fèvle. Of course, we tasted, some of us have tasted the older style of wine that your father made, and you had a change of style. What led you to do it, and what exactly did you do to make a different style of wine?
Yeah, so my father was has always been a big fan of tannins. His belief was really that a great wine should be built over tannins, and tannins would be the backbone of a wine. Something that I respect, but I don't totally agree with. For me, I am much more keen on. I strongly believe that each vintage has its own balance, and therefore the tannin is just a component of a wine, and the winemaker should really should find the right balance per vintage. And I'm not so keen on tannins as my father. I am much more with my team, with Jérôme. We are much more looking at finding the best balance as possible per vintage, trying to get the most serious wine we can from that vintage, without going into overly tannic built type of wines. So what have we done? We have when I took over my father in 2005, I spent nearly 2 years visiting many domains. I tried to visit at least one domain per week, and trying to identify what in their vinification techniques, in their growing techniques, what they were doing that would eventually make those wines. And we try, with Jérôme, we try to put together, to identify and to put in place what we believe would lead to wines that are much more delicate and velvety. This is, if you ask me how I would define our wines today, I would say I like wines that are feminine, delicate, and uh, and velvety. That's really what drives us today.
Mm. Okay.
And in terms of so in terms your question, what have we changed? What have we done? We have done many things, many things. It would be too long to just enumerate them all of them here. But we have changed the way we work in the vineyards. We have changed the way we bring the grapes into the vats. Obviously, my father and I, everything as is being picked by hand, is handpicked. But the way we vinify, the way we bring the vines into the grapes into the vat is very different. And then also the coppers we are using today is quite different than the one or quite different than the one my father was using. Now we are much more. We have all the coppers have been changed. To name them, we have a majority of François Frère and Taranceau, but we are still making a lot of. Every year we are trying new coppers because I strongly believe that élevage, the wood finding of wine is an extremely important type of type of job. Very much so.
Okay. Okay.
Voilà,
Great.
so that was the story about Damo d'Enchegno. In 2015, I think they showed quite well, and I'm quite surprised to see that I was a little nervous to see a little bit of greenish taste coming from the whole cluster, but not at all. I can't find it at all.
No.
I don't know if you found it, but no,
No.
I'm very happily surprised.
I find them to be very well integrated. I think in terms of whole clusters, I don't see any effect. In the very beginning, the first drop I poured into the glass had a hint of new oak, but then after a few swirl, I think the oak also has gone. Maybe it's just sleeping in the bottle. So, I mean, for me,
Any
15
preference?
is such an important vintage. People love to try it all the time. You know, you talk about a young and exciting vintage from Burgundy. People always have 15 in mind. So we get to try a lot of different 15s. In fact, I had your Clos des Coctons 15 just a few days ago. But it needed almost a day to really feel the wine because it was quite shut down when it was first opened.
This is really the risk you have with 15. For me, 2015 is very much like 2005. It's really those type of vintage that are spectacular, but at some point will shut down. And when they do, no one knows really when they will come back. And for me, it's the drinking window of 2015 is far from being from being there. Absolutely not. Yeah. You should really, but you should really put some in your cellars because it's obviously. I guess I don't know if you still have some in inventory at Altaïa, but we are here at the Domain. Everything has been sold, and it's a vintage that's it's a vintage. It's too sad to open a bottle like this because it's everything is sold out, and when a bottle has been killed, it will never come back.
Well, some people enjoy the wine over the course of its life, right? So some people like it young. Of course, it would be nice to have some mature wines all the time, but when you're in a situation in a market like Hong Kong, for example, it's difficult to find old bottles. Thanks to you, I mean, we have some older vintages of Nuits Saint-Georges, which you released to us a couple of years ago. We have some, 08, 07, even 06. In fact, we
right?
had some OH Agneau, and
Okay. Wow,
those are
superb.
lovely, really nice.
Superb, superb,
Yeah,
superb.
yeah, yeah.
Actually, I had that wine. I had that wine 2 or 3 weeks ago. The Chigno O8. What a wine! What a wine it was.
Yeah,
Very good, great vintage.
yeah.
A vintage that was quite under the radar, but great vintage. And you know, coming back on and maybe to close on the 15, most people got super excited about the reds, but something you should really not look down is the white. The whites, the 15 whites are spectacular, and I
Mm.
think it's one of the greatest vintage of the 2010 decade. It's
Really? Okay.
oh yeah. Enfin, in my sense, huh? You know,
Mm.
everybody got excited about 14 and 17.
Yeah.
For me, 15 is extraordinary. It's ripe, it's rich, not a single hint of oxidation. Very pretty. The aromatic is explosive. I love it.
Mm.
I love them.
Mm.
Love them. You should really consider taking a look back to some whites 15. I'm a
Okay.
huge fan.
Okay. But would you say that 15 whites is more of the traditional style of Burgundy? Because, you know, people like to talk about the 14 and 17 because they are definitely straighter, whereas 15 is a bit
Sure.
wider.
Yes, when they were bottled. When they were bottled, I agree. When they were first released, the 15s were a little too rich, and therefore were not. I didn't. They were not so exciting to me at first. But then, I rediscovered those wines over those past few months, maybe year, and really I changed my mind. I changed my mind. In the bottle, those wines have gained, the whites have gained in freshness, in tension. It's quite surprising, very much.
Mm.
Really, you should take a look.
Okay, would love to. All right, I think it's time to move to the pair of
To move on,
17s.
of course. Alors, so 17, for those who have been with us since the beginning, 17, we are going back in the southern part of Nuit Saint-Georges, where, as I like to say, as I said, this is for me really where Côte de Beaune is starting. Those, so we have two wines. We have Porret Saint-Georges and Les Saint-Georges. So those two vineyards are very close to each other, with the exception that, for me, what really differentiates Les Saint-Georges and Les Porret Saint-Georges is the quality and the finesse of tannins. Les Saint-Georges is a very big, dense, masculine wine, but with tannins that are very refined. It's quite rare to find those type of wines in Burgundy, and this is why that, in my sense, Les Saint-Georges really stands out in all the wines of Nuit Saint-Georges.
Is that why you
Alors,
created a special label for it too?
no, we have created, in fact, today, since 2011, all our Grand Crus have a vertical label where we don't have we don't have the neck,
Yeah.
as we say. All the Grand Crus now are like this. All bottles are numbered, and you might have heard that, Les Saint Georges, there's there is an association that is willing to reclassify Les Saint Georges as a Grand Cru,
Mm.
and for us, in our mind, Les Saint Georges is already a Grand Cru. So at the domain, Les Saint-Georges, we label it as a Grand Cru, even though of course it's not stated Grand Cru, of course, because it's still a Premier Cru, but at least we wanted to emphasize that at the domain we really consider Les Saint-Georges as being as being a true Grand Cru.
Brilliant. Okay, so tell us a little bit about the 17 vintage, please.
Alors, so the 2017 vintage was is a very, very pretty vintage. It's not considered, I think, as great. I'm talking for the reds. I think the 17, the 17 white, it's something else. The 17 white, it's one of the greatest vintage we've done. But as far as the reds are concerned, it's a very, very pretty. I love the aromatic. Now, in terms of depth, you won't have the same depth as you had in 15, 16, and nor 18 or 19. I would say 17. In my opinion, the 2010 decade for red has been extraordinary for Burgundy. 17 is a very, very, very good vintage that unfortunately is between 15 and 16, 18 and 19 that are four very, very, very serious serious wines in terms of if I'm talking for collectors, for people who really collect wine, I'm not so sure 17 would be they would put 17 in their cellars, because 17 I'm not so sure 17 will last 50 years. That's if you want wines that will last 50 years, you have 15, you have 16, 18 and 19. 17 won't last as much yet for restaurants, yet for early drinking. What a vintage! Pretty much like 2007. You know, if people who are watching this video have enjoyed the red 2007s, they will love the 17s, because it's very much the same type of vintage. Very
Is
pretty.
it better than 07?
For me, yes. It's more dense than 7, but you have the same type of very exciting aromatic, very, very exciting aromatic. And you know, when we host lunch or dinners here in Nuits Saint-Georges with friends or customers, very, very often, if not all the time, what I like to serve is red 07. The red 07s have never disappointed. From the moment we bottled them until now, they have never shut down. They have been super good all the way, and I'm pretty sure the 17 will be the same. I don't see the 17 to shut down at some point. So it's a very interesting vintage for that in that way.
I can't agree more about 07s, because you know I drink it quite often, and I find them to be providing such pleasure. It's always very easy in a way. It's elegant, it's forward. And it gives you, you know, a good glimpse of the terroir of whichever wine you're drinking. But anyway, 17, I believe, and I see it as a better, an improved version of 07. And that's why I always promote it to my clients. Not because it's the vintage that we stock now.
No, but it's I'm very you know, it's funny because no, the 2015, 16, 18, 19, like those big famous vintage of vintages that people buy just by reading it's great. When they read reports that it's great, they have to stock it. But the 17, it's really when people get to taste them, they said, "Wow, damn, that's really, really, really good." And now the 17 is exactly what we are. As you might know, For us, our biggest market for Faivelet is the French market. Nearly 40% of our sales are made in France, and the 17 is really what we are selling now. The restaurants, as I said, restaurants are very exciting about this vintage because it's super pretty, extremely easy to drink. So yeah, it's very much what we are selling. It's true that the 15, the 16, 18, and I suppose 19, because 19 will be released in the weeks to come. The majority of those wines were mostly attracted by export, and mostly attracted by people who really collect wine to cellar. I wouldn't say speculate, because a lot of them are being drunk, but the reality is that the 17 is a much more drinkable type of vintage.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy drinking Nuits Saint-Georges, and it shows the style of the producers in some, and then it shows the terroir in some wines. But I find the fact that people don't always, it may not be the first choice of Burgundy that they drink, which is a bit unfair, because I find them to be very interesting. If you really get to know it, you taste the different vineyards within Nuits Saint-Georges, and you get to learn something after you taste the wines from the north versus the wine of the south. So what
I can't agree more.
What more do you think needs to be done to promote the wines of Nuits Saint-Georges?
It's a good question, because we are doing we spend a fair amount of energy promoting them. No, as I said, for me it's difficult to talk about one Nuits Saint-Georges, because Nuits Saint-Georges is tricky. The northern part and the southern part are not the same. For me, the northern part of Nuits Saint-Georges, the Chéniaux and Damaude for Faivelet, but for Les Boudeaux, for example, at Griveaux, or Les Vignerons, etc. For me, it's really an opportunity to get a great Vosne Romanée for a fraction of the price. This is for me. This is how I would promote this, because Vosne Romanée is a very tiny village. The Premier Crus of Vosne Romanée are very rare, very rare. So if you can put your hands on some Boudeaux or Damaude or Chéniaux of a great producer, it's having access to a great Vosne Romanée for a fraction of the price, just like I said. And when you're going south, in l'Écaille, in les Saint-Georges, les Porets Saint-Georges, les Vaucrins, les Pruniers, here you get a wine that is that is what people expect from Nuits Saint-Georges. A little rustic, pretty dense, but still very interesting and very warm. Very warm. I like Nuits Saint-Georges. It's those wines are quite squared, as I said, a little rustic, but it's a nice rusticity. It's just like having a friend who plays rugby. That's pretty much what Nuits Saint-Georges is. He can be a poet, but he still plays rugby.
Okay, great. And we're coming to the end of the tasting. I just want to go to the recent harvest. How was 2020 for you? Was it a good harvest?
Alors, 2020 was we were quite nervous about 2020, because we knew it would be a very early picking vintage, pretty much like 2003. And even though I like 2003, 2003 for me is an interesting vintage. I wouldn't call it a spectacular vintage. I think in the 2003, the wines can be a little dry. the tannins can be sometimes a little too obvious, and we were really on the. I was I was nervous because we were looking at the weather and looking at the amount of water we had, looking at the temperature we had. It looked very much like 2003. And when we now that it's been picked, now that it's been vinified, I can tell you it's so different than 2020. It's we are blown away how fresh and vibrant the wines are. I think the reds will be. I'd like to say extraordinary, but people will think I'm coming from Bordeaux, and that I keep telling that every year is better than the previous one. But I can tell you too soon to say whether it will be better than 18 or 19. But I wouldn't say it's better than 18 or 19. But what I can say is that it's gonna be a super great vintage. A super great vintage. And as far as the whites are concerned, I can tell you I'm super positive for the whites. The whites, to be frankly honest, I was not. I think the 18s were good. The 19s are good. Those two vintages are not spectacular. 2020 will be
for whites. You mean
for whites?
Okay.
For whites. Vintages in whites are never. It's never. You never have a bad vintage for Chardonnay. You have great vintages and extraordinary vintages. For me, 2020 will be an extraordinary vintage for the whites. So stay tuned. We still have more than a year. More than a year in front of us. We still have the 19 coming on the market in the weeks to come. So, but no, 2020 in a nutshell, we are very happy. A little disappointed with the volumes that are quite low, but overall, I much prefer making great wines in low volumes than so wine in large volume. So overall, I'm very happy.
Last question about the market. You mentioned that 40% of your wine goes to France and the rest are export. So what happened in the last few months when, there are a few months when things need to shut down and some export markets are obviously struggling more than others. For example, here in Hong Kong, we had to close down the restaurants for dinner for almost 2 months. So there was no dinner trade. And unfortunately, people don't drink at lunch in a restaurant. So, I mean, we of course try to find different ways to tap into the VIP clients, the private client business. But so, what have you done in your world?
So, the vast majority of sales we do in France are for restaurants. That's just like you said. So restaurants have been very badly impacted by the situation, but what we have seen, strangely enough, is that a lot of privates have bought wines, whether it was to drink or to put in their cellars. The reality is that we have seen a boom with our private clients. Now, so today I'm very happy because we are if we talk about figures, we are doing almost the same as last year. Export plus France to come together. I'm much more concerned about the fall and the winter to come, because you might have seen in the newspaper that now all the big cities in France.
Yeah, 9 cities, right? Yeah.
Yes, 9 cities. There's a curfew at 9 p.m. So we know that just like you, if people drink a little bit for lunch, the majority of the wine is consumed at night, and the majority, if not the all restaurants will just not open, because if you have to shut down at 9, what are you? It just doesn't make sense to open your business. Yeah. So no, I'm a little concerned about the fall and winter. The good thing for us is that we are not, our products don't perish. You know, a wine that is not consumed today can be consumed in a few years from now. So it's a good thing, as long as we have the cash to make the winery running. We are fine, and so far so good. The wines we don't sell, the wines we don't drink and sell today, we will sell them and drink them tomorrow.
I'll be happy to help you drink them.
Yes. With you, Polo. I count on you.
Fantastic. Okay, great. Thank
you
so
great
much
talking to you
for this live tasting.
My pleasure.
It's pleasure. Good, you know, great pleasure to see you and exchange, and also to taste some of these lovely wines together. So, all the best. I don't know when I'll get to come to Burgundy or you to Hong Kong, but we'll keep in touch this way.
As soon as we can. As soon as we can. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
You take care, Paolo.
You too. Thanks.
À bientôt. Bye bye. Bye.